Welcome back to another episode of Searching for McGuffin with your hosts,
George.
Gabe.
And Link. That wasn't as funny as the first time.
Yeah, because you did it last week. Yeah, that's okay. Well, still Socrates here to talk about this little mini series that we got going on about action figures, right?
Action figures, that's
Yeah.
right. Not dolls,
Yeah.
not toys.
Well, what is the difference?
A doll?
Yeah.
For me, dolls are, girl toys, and action figures are boy toys.
Is that what the dictionary says? Like right
That
next
is
to
my
dolls,
dictionary.
a girl toy. Action figures a boy
Yeah.
toy. So are action figures just the excuse for guys to play with dolls, or
No.
like?
Oh, you have adventures with action figures.
Oh,
Right? You don't play with dolls.
Oh, so you have this thing
What
does not
was
look good on
what
camera.
was that?
Let's just try to get closer to the mic.
The internet is forever.
Please don't clip that. For those of you listening, I'm not going to explain.
How do you play with dolls,
that
bro?
visual.
How do you play with dolls?
I do not play with.
How do you play with the boy toys?
If you could get closer to the mic, that was the visual that I was trying to communicate.
This isn't that kind of episode, all right?
And I knew it when I did it. Like as I was doing it, I was like, "Oh, this action was a
Stick
mistake."
to the children's toys, okay?
Okay, all right. So that's another episode.
What do we have here, George?
Oh, well, that is. We talked last week about going to the conventions and trading, bartering with your friends. Gabe mentioned that he traded with a friend
And then broke his arm.
and
Yeah,
then
broke his arm.
And then broke his arm. Well, I did a trade for this figure that broke my heart
He broke his arm for a deal.
because the story behind this, I don't think I've shared this because was
You have.
You have, right?
On the show?
In
Yeah.
the show,
Okay,
when
so
last
I think
time
he was
on.
here.
Oh.
when he
Second to
was
last
here,
time.
he
oh,
said
he
it.
had already given it to me.
No.
Oh no! Oh, I traded.
No,
So,
but he told the
so
story.
this is the follow up to that story. Okay, the original story was Sock traded me a bunch of his DC cards for my Spider-Man 2099 figure.
A doubles on my end.
Yeah, so what
there we
I thought it was a really good trade because the cards were worth more than my figure. But then, like in hindsight, as I grew up, I realized that they were his doubles. So
Man,
he
your
literally
your friends really betrayed you growing
yeah,
up, man.
he literally lost nothing and gained my best figure. And I don't know if I mentioned it.
That's the skill he's teaching his kids, all right?
That's right. Negotiating. Yeah.
And I think I might have seeded because I know for a birthday I gave you the Clone Saga box set.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was like this one would have fit perfectly with that. So that might have
Perfectly.
also been my fault. Yeah, to get you another Spider-Man. But since then in that story, after I shared that and we laughed about it, I actually got this for Christmas. I believe last Christmas.
Last year?
Yeah, last year. This came in the mail. The Spider-Man 2099 figure that I had lost so many years ago.
That's such a sick toy.
It is. I had no idea it had a giant cannon and a battle axe. Is
A
this?
battle axe.
Are these things that Miguel O'Hara had? I don't
No,
remember. Yeah.
No. This may have been something from like a Ghost Rider,
Oh,
figure
that
or
makes
villain that they're like, oh, just give it to him.
Like we made too many.
Right.
We're
So
not-
the
Also,
toy
it looks-
industry is like
it
the
looks
comic
sick.
industry. They're like, oh, just, it's kid stuff. Just give it to them.
Yeah.
Nah,
Well,
nah.
I remember that collecting toys. They would be random things that like didn't pertain to the character,
Yeah.
but you would try to create your own stories to like why he has a giant battle axe
The original multiverse.
or a cannon that like literally a human arm cannot support. I mean, I guess he has super strength, but
It does. Spider strength.
yeah. So I get. Well, I
Future
mean,
spider strength.
when you have that much spider strength, what do you even need an arm cannon for? But so we're here back again to talk about toys. So Miguel has come back into my life, thankfully. You wanted to do some deep dive. What now? What did I say? Are you still thinking about
No,
the
continue.
motion that I made at the beginning of the
No,
episode?
continue.
Okay. You want to do some deep dives on some of these franchises, some of these brands.
Yeah, so this is a Spider-Man, right? And then Spider-Man had a bunch of different waves tied to the 90s TV show. This is, I forget what wave it was from and what other toys were in that line.
Who made those Spider-Man toys?
This has to be Toy Biz,
Toy Biz.
definitely. And like you mentioned, this was a pretty awesome figure to have. It has soft goods on it and it has the different
And that was rare
articulation.
at the
Yeah,
time, yeah.
definitely rare. But then on the same type of scale, you had the X-Men people, and then you had like Hulks, and then Iron Man and Fantastic Four. And I didn't really remember a lot of DC figures matching this type of style. They had, I think, like Total Justice and maybe some other stuff. Like I think they were like Batman heavy.
Yeah, the DC when are DC not Batman heavy?
Right.
The DC figures I remember having were like throwbacks. Like the Mr. Freeze looked real old school.
Yeah. So the superpower lines.
Yeah, and like they looked like old toys, and
Right.
also they were very fragile. Because I remember breaking a lot of DC figures.
I broke every Flash I ever had.
Yeah.
That was like the super easiest one to break.
Yeah, a lot of the toys were those like WWF Superstar lines that they were stationary, but their arm like you'd pull it back
Right.
and it would do like a punch or something.
Right.
But
Action.
yeah,
Well, that's another reason why they're called action figures. A lot of these boy focused toys had some sort of action where they would kick, they would punch,
G.I. Joe
they
Kung
would
Fu
have
grip.
a light, right, a kung fu grip.
Yeah.
So there was actual action tied to the figure itself.
Oh, we had lost that by the time we were growing up.
Yeah, this has no action. This is just details.
It's
and
just the
whatnot.
action that you give it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is nice.
Yeah. I remember those WWF toys. They used to just be like a shell, like a line down the middle, just clamped together. So when you would drop them, they would just split into two, and like the arms would go flying. Yeah, I don't know. It must have been made in China.
You ever do those? You'll like have like 5 or 6 different broken action figures, and you'll get like the arm of one and put it on the leg of the other one in the body and try and clamp it all, and it really wouldn't work.
I
You're
can't.
trying
The
to.
Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Trying to make a
Are you
Frankenstein
Sid
figure.
from Toy Story? I can't say that I did. I remember every time a toy would break, it was just like I would hold like a funeral for it.
Yeah, Sid is awesome. That kid really thought out of the box
Hot
and
take.
had a fun time, with
Sid
his
was the
action
victim.
figures.
Sid was the victim.
Sid did
truly-
nothing wrong.
Truly, bro, those toys traumatized that poor kid for the rest of his life.
Yeah. If you think about it, he actually gave those toys new life.
Yeah.
Because they would have been trashed.
Right.
Right. But well, actually, he's the one who broke them, though, right? Like on purpose.
He was
killed
having
him?
fun. He was
And
having
then-
fun with them. He was
Yeah,
having fun with
okay.
them. There's different
Alright.
ways to have fun and play with action figures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure at one point everyone has a story of tying some sort of bottle rocket or firework to an action figure and trying to launch it or trying to explode it, trying to melt them, trying to freeze them.
Yeah,
trying
until Toy Story, when I realized that toys are sentient beings and had lives.
to...
Then I was like, I'm just torturing them.
So I'll tell you, side note, we do Elf on the Shelf. And, when the elf comes in December, one of his powers is that he animates all the other toys to like have parties, make food, grab cookies from the cupboard, etc. So it's a very interesting time in my house when December rolls around and the Elf on the Shelf shows up because all of the toys actually do get animated.
Oh God, I'm worried about the X-Men toys now with the Sentinel.
Oh, imagine what
coming
the
in.
next year the Sentinels will. But I don't know. I forget when they're going to be released. So you pre-order these action figures, and there is no specific. Oh, they'll be ready on March or April.
Really?
So, yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like whenever they make them.
They have a date, but it's very tentative. These
Fall
figures have to
2025, maybe.
made
Q2,
in
possible.
China, right? This is China.
Yeah.
So if you're big into tariffs and whatnot with the incoming administration, you're gonna be paying more for these action figures because they definitely are made.
Oh, we're gonna be
Um,
paying more. I thought the way that he told me that they were gonna be paying more.
It doesn't work like that.
Ah,
It doesn't work like that.
I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. Everyone,
The consumer is the one that picks
Yeah.
up the bill on that one, Mr. Trump.
if you're listening, lower the tariffs.
Isn't he a big fan?
We
Is he
got-
a big fan? Big fan.
We just want to buy the toys, okay? We just want to import the toys from China. That's all.
So we talked about Toy Biz. We talked about Kenner. There's other lines, and I'm not like an expert on what company did what, but
Mhm.
Playmates has always been big into turtles. I think they're the only people
Yeah.
with that turtles license, and they have pumped out action figures galore since that property hit the mainstream. And you had like your traditional 4 turtles with the Splinter and the Shredder, right? And they had like
No,
a
Shredder
foot
toys are
soldier
so
and whatnot,
cool.
and Bebop and Rocksteady. I played with all of those, and then the line expanded to the other mutants and whatnot. And nowadays they're definitely reissuing a lot of those.
Yeah, I've seen 'em.
those
I've been
figures
tempted.
under NECA, maybe. I forget the name of the company, but they're
Yeah.
doing a really good job at.
I think it might be
Putting up
NECA because
brand
I
new
think I saw like the original turtle
Yeah.
like lineup and like a stand. Yeah.
It's crazy. So you have, you've seen this in print, right? You'll see like Golden Age Batman or Golden Age Superman, reprinted editions and whatnot. And then you're seeing that now. You have reprinted action figures or manufactured action figures in the same card, in the same blister packs, putting out there for guys my age, right?
Yeah,
To then buy
that's what I had
that.
mentioned last week that I saw. Well, I'm like, I walked into a toy aisle and it was like, what? These are literally the exact same toys,
right? So you buy that, and then you're like, oh, here, I'm gonna buy it for my son now. You know, it's really interesting marketing, and I think it does work. I bought a few of these lines for the boys. They open them up and just go crazy, and that's really what they're for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're not collectibles because the collectibles stick to the original releases,
Right.
and people want those.
We'll give it 20 years though.
Sure,
They'll
sure.
be like, oh, the 2024 re-release of the 1994 Kenner edition.
Right, right.
I remember sometimes they would be the Star Wars toys had like a hollow foil in the picture.
Oh yeah,
And then
Oh,
like
yeah.
some of them didn't have a hollow foil, and they're like, is it worth more with or without the hollow foil? Like,
or like the lightsaber sizes.
yes,
Isn't that crazy?
Dude, you and my dad had like all the toys that you could possibly have from the boxes.
yeah,
And still in the boxes.
yeah.
And depending on the film, from the original trilogy to the prequels, what happened to those?
Well, that's what happened to me not buying the Kenner, because I already, like I mentioned, I already had the original A New Hope, like the whole line. And no, not A New Hope, because I also had the Shadows of the Empire and the Return of the Jedi, right? So I had the original line. But when episode 1 came out, and I think we've shared this before, I called you and I was like, hey man, you saw Star Wars? It sucked, right? I can't believe it. And then your dad, Gabe, showed up with the entire Phantom Menace figure line in
All
box.
of them.
Yeah, and I'm like, why did you do this? It was just like,
The amount of money my father has spent on figurines, toys would astound anybody. Because he's also like boxes of the still in their packaging.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Part of the collection
and it's just, and also was the Fisher Price toys we used to talk about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Fisher Price Knights.
But then he
Great
got
Adventure.
He got into like the figurine games, like Warhammer and stuff like that.
I've refused to. He's tried to get me into that,
and
I
the
was like,
amount of it's crazy. The amount of money, one of those guys costs, and then once you get one of those guys, and the amount of detail you have to put into painting them a certain color, and like the different aspects of their armor, of their weapons. It's. I mean, I applaud him, but at the same time, it is an expensive hobby.
Speaking about army units, there's always the henchman, right?
Yeah.
Like the foot soldier, the stormtrooper. What was that like for you growing up? Did you buy one of them? Did you buy multiple of them?
I did not, but I helped my boys army build. So Hector got into stormtrooper or like clone troopers, really.
Yeah.
And then he had a couple.
Well, because they're like all individual, right? The clone troopers are different.
What are they called when they have the Lego set or like the Lego background? Like they have like a scene or whatever it is, and they have like the figures in position like in certain ways. I don't know what it's called, but it's
like a
display.
diorama.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
So I helped him buy.
Why do they have a
enough-
specific Lego term for that?
Yes, they do.
Oh,
Yes, they do. But I don't know it off the top of my head.
I think producer Dan would probably be the Lego aficionado here, but he's not on this call.
Next
So.
time we'll put it in the show notes.
Put it in the thank you.
In the notes.
I'm
Is
glad
there
that
any
came.
show notes?
Yep, I'm glad it came from the guest.
It's a true
So,
fan right there.
I helped him build his little Lego minifig stormtrooper armies and stuff like that because it added to the diorama.
Yeah.
And then I had gotten so many of those Power of the Force stormtroopers like for $2, $3, like they were worth it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll buy 5 of them just to have them,
just to have around the stormtroopers.
chasing Han and all that.
Yeah. I would buy one stormtrooper. I'd buy one foot soldier, and then I would want to get like the maximum out of that figure.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, this is the super foot soldier. Like this foot soldier, he's actually a huge threat, and like it takes all the Ninja Turtles to take on this one super foot soldier. But then with Star Wars, they would have like Han as a stormtrooper,
Right.
Luke as a
Luke was- and then
stormtrooper.
you can
I
add
was like,
more.
all right, now I got more stormtroopers. Yeah. So those were. I already have a Luke and a Han.
All sounds so Fortnite-esque.
Yeah, this is basically what I do with like skins in Fortnite now. Yeah, that's how they get me. I'm a sucker.
Now I remember I was always like just buying heroes, and then there'd always be like that one villain that I'd get, and like I'd have like the stormtroopers and stuff like that, but like the main like that would fight like 1v1 against any of the Jedi heroes that I had. But I remember it was literally just Vader. Vader was like that main villain that I had, and Vader would fight everybody. And I remember it was so terrible when a lightsaber would break, and I'm just like, oh my god, You have no purpose now.
You know.
And then I would have to switch lightsabers. But I remember Vader was fighting everybody. I remember when I got Lord of the Rings toys. I got Aragorn and Gandalf, and I was having these guys like fight Vader, and it was like the greatest crossover fight.
I don't think we spoke about that. When you have the toys, you can actually do your own universe crossover,
Right,
and stuff
yeah.
like that. And that was always fantastic to do as a kid. Especially, if you have siblings, like, right now with my boys, we'll do, okay, this team of guys, and you pick, 5 of whoever you want. And I'll pick, like, Robin, because he's, in the little trunks and stuff like that. It'd just be funny about it. But, Robin, Superman, and Ghost Rider, and whatever. You can mix them all up with the mask figure I have, and then just smash them all up and have, like, an adventure with all these different type of brands that you'll never see interact in any other type of media.
Especially for us growing up, you really never saw them interact.
Until Fortnite.
Yeah, now we got a lot of crossovers like all over. I honestly was spoiled with video games and cartoons and stuff like that. They do a lot more of that stuff nowadays. But some of the things that exist now is like you would have never imagined them. This was the only battlefield where these things would happen in your imagination with your figures at home. One thing I did was I didn't even know there was a term for this. I found out about it recently. It was called a figure fed, which is like I had a wrestling federation, but it wasn't just wrestlers. Every toy was fair game. So I had like new gimmicks, like Batman wasn't Batman. He was like the Bat. And did you ever do this or no?
No.
Yeah. So I had a notebook and it had like a rolling roster and I would rename everyone and I would like keep track of wins and losses and I would choreograph. And when I first started, we were like, we were kind of struggling. It was after Hurricane Andrew, right? So it's like 92, 93, right? So we didn't have a lot. So my dad couldn't buy me the wrestling ring. I was like, I want the wrestling ring. And he's like, not this Christmas, not this Christmas. So what he actually did was he took like a milk carton, not a crate, the ones that you put 4 gallons at to delivery, right? And he cut them. So there was like 4 ring posts. And then he took actual rope and he like put it around the 4. And then he took actual canvas and put it down like in the gap. And I had like legitimately like an actual ring that he built for me because we couldn't get like the $50 WWF ring.
That ring sounds better than the
it was better.
Awesome.
It was significantly bigger. It was like very structurally intact. It had authentic rope and canvas. Plus I took another milk crate, put it on top, steel cage. Yeah, that's right. It was hell in the cell, but it had the holes for me to like, I would take the ropes out and I could move the figures inside the cage. So it was like, you're
just GMing your toys.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so I had like my own GM, so it was a figure fed, and it wasn't just the wrestlers. It was like every Spider-Man, Batman, like Lord of the Rings. They were all just boom. They were all
human
members.
spider.
And you notice that I said Lord of the Rings.
Bonesaw is ready.
Yeah, you notice I said Lord of the Rings, which means I was clearly doing this deep into the 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like a grown adult.
No, those toys are awesome, bro. Those toys are awesome. I still have. I still have Gandalf. Like it's a handless Gandalf. I don't know where his staff went, but he doesn't have a hand. And then Aragorn lost. Return of the King. Aragorn has lost his hair. The hair clip, so he's just bald. I still have those toys. Those are probably like the few. So I feel like a lot of the toys that I had were in boxes. I don't know where those are.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Somewhere in the
they
universe.
were in boxes in a box in a closet somewhere. That's a shame.
Tragedy, but
for me, toys are to be played with. So
yeah, definitely.
Like I respect people; they could do what they want with, but like for example, I got these Funko Pops here, and they're in boxes, right? But most of them were gifts. Like I honestly, like the ones I have them out and about, like to play with, they're to use. Oh, what were some other like franchises or toy lines do you think that were significant either then or now?
X-Men
for sure. We had mentioned
those are the coolest toys, man.
Street Sharks and other companies that tried to capture the magic that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles wanted or successfully captured.
Yeah, you mentioned Snailians, right?
Snailians was hilarious.
There's like little rubber snails.
Listen to this concept.
Yeah, little rubber snails that you would clamp these like exoskeleton suits on.
Right.
So they were like muscle men wrestlers, but then they would like have mech fights.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. Exo Squad was
Exo
another
Squad
mech.
is
Exo
awesome,
Squad,
right?
yeah.
You had Exo Squads, right, Gabe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you inherited those. Your
Yeah.
dad really got
Those
into
were
Exo Squad.
those were so cool. Like the missiles shooting out from them. Like the projectiles. Remember the projectile
Yes.
toys? Those were the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Like
The most dangerous ones too.
yeah.
I'm surprised we still had projectiles that late. Like that. I think the Boba Fett missile was like a big controversial at its time. It like killed some kids and.
I remember this one time we took a trip to New York. We would go often. This was around the time that The Dark Knight came out, and I went with my mom to go watch it. She took me. She didn't know what the hell was going on. But I'm over here watching it like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And then immediately I'm like, because this was in Times Square. So I was like, immediately, Mom, we're going to Toys R Us. Right then and there, I was like, let's go.
A sentence you can no longer say.
And unfortunately, and I remember this was probably my favorite place like on the planet at the time. I think that's why New York has such like a high, like that's one of my favorite places like ever, because I think I have so many memories about this. And I remember going to the Toys R Us, and this was like a multi-level. I think it had like 5 floors or something, or 3 floors, something like that. It seemed huge to me.
Yeah.
It had a Ferris wheel inside of it, and a giant Jeffrey the giraffe. And they just
Like
had
an actual Ferris wheel you can get into
Yeah,
and
you
ride.
can
or
ride,
something.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like an actual giraffe that they fed grass to, and
and it was bigger than
Serious?
normal giraffe.
no, I think it was,
No.
but it wasn't like a character Jeffrey. It was like a just an actual.
I think it had a shirt.
Oh, it had a shirt. No
Whatever,
pants?
whatever Jeffrey wears.
Wow, whatever. New York.
Progress.
Yeah.
So you go. So it's like you go up. They have different sections, like your Legos, your Star Wars. They had just a bunch of different sections. I remember since Batman had come out, they brought the toys back, and I remember I got a Christian Bale Batman, and his Tumbler, the Batmobile, and that thing was huge. And it's somewhere around. I think you're old at your mom's house.
Yeah, it's probably still at
And
my
I
mom's
think
house.
Nick.
There is a toy chest
Producer
in the
Nick
closet
played
that
it.
I'm pretty sure is still full. Yeah, producer Nick played with it.
Because I remember that thing, and it still had projectiles. It would shoot. It would like you'd press it had multiple buttons. You press a button, the sides would open, and the cannons would come out, and then it would shoot the missiles out. And I just remember that was probably one of my favorite toys. That and the Batman, because you buy the Batman and it would pop right into the driver's seat, and it had lights, it had noises, it sounds, and I just remember like those are one of like my fondest memories of like being in a different place and going to that store was just. I still think I haven't thought about that in a long time, but it's like I think about it now. I'm just like that was. And the same thing when you said exosuits. I was just like, when you said it the first time, I was like, does that sound vague? And then immediately I had a memory of me playing with the toys.
Yeah, taking the little cable that was sticking out of the exosuit and plugging it into the hole in the back of the head of the figures. You remember that?
Yeah.
They actually like added that
A
detail.
better story than Avatar.
Yeah, actually, James Cameron probably just watched Exo Squad while he was high, and it was like, I got a great idea for a movie. Did you not also have a Ninja Batman from that line, by the way?
Yeah.
Batman Begins? Ninja Batman.
How many Batmans has been produced? Because you have like, Snow Batman.
No, hundreds.
Repelling Batman.
Spider-Man's not that far
Radar
behind.
Batman.
In the 90s, I felt like they were just making new spider suits and new bat suits, like just to sell a new.
I think I had most of them though. That's the thing. Like they would come out and I'd be like, I'm buying this Batman. Yeah. I had so many Batmans around that I was just like, it became like into the Batverse.
Yeah.
Like,
I actually did that. I had each Batman be like from another like timeline or another like version, or I would like make up a persona under the cowl.
I remember one time they jumped Gandalf and they were just beating him up. It was like 3 of them like boop.
I'm convinced that like modern comic book writers are just writing out the stories that they probably played with. Like they wrote those stories when they were a kid, and they're just putting them out there now. They've been thinking about this for a really long time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I had an unhealthy amount of Batman. Like it was crazy. Like I remember that one because I did the same thing with Tarzan, because that Tarzan toy.
Yeah,
I eventually ended up trading my friend with it, but I also ended up buying some other ones. But
you
it's
were
great
big into the Disney's Tarzan line. This is
No, there was a line of Tarzan, and it had
He
like,
had
they like
the-
a modernized version of it at one point.
like based on the books.
the first one.
No, they like kind of updated it to where there was like lizard people or something like that.
That was from the
Aliens.
movie. And I remember this one of the first one that I had like I don't know what you would call it, like a mechanism on his back, and you would press, and his arms would go like this. And then there was another one with like he had like different articulations, and he would move around.
Double punch.
I remember the Spider-Man ones were the best to like move around and like make him do like the different flips and the web shooters and stuff like that. Man, I even like beyond action figures. I remember getting when the movies would come out. I remember getting the gloves and the web canisters.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I left it in my mom's car, and she went to come pick me up, and I see just this giant crack in the windshield, and I was like, "Hey, that looks like a spider web, like a like a spider web." And I'm like, and then I got to the car first, and my mom gets there, and she's like pissed. I can already tell. It was like, she's like, "You left this in the car, and it blew up, and the windshield."
That seems like a hazard.
Yeah, it was. But that was still one of the coolest toys because I was shooting webs out. That was like.
Yeah, wow. I never got to.
Every kid's fantasy, right? Shooting webs and catching things.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome. You cannot have a toy podcast or a toy subject heavy podcast without mentioning GI Joes.
Yeah,
fantastic. All those little soldiers and all their enemy Cobra people and all the vehicles. You got to mention also He-Man and the Masters of the Universe line. And then you have to mention all of the other things like the Snailians, right? The Exo Squad. There's like so much more.
I had a weird collection. Okay. I got really into I don't remember. I think it's 1990 or 92. I don't know. The Dick Tracy movie starring Warren Beatty.
Yeah, great.
And I had all the Dick Tracy toys. I had the blank face guy. Yeah, I had Prune Face. I had
Blank Face.
Yeah, no, the blank I think is his name. The blank.
So that was Madonna's character.
Yeah, that was Madonna. Yeah. But that's Madonna's character in the movie.
You're right.
Right, but I think he has another identity in the comic books. Like Hammerhead. I don't know what else. No, that's a Spider-Man.
They had Flat Top.
Yeah.
He had just
flat top. There we
top.
go. He kind of
Mr. Big was another one.
Yeah,
all those characters are.
And I had
very
this
magic.
Dick Tracy custom like carrying case.
Okay.
Where it was like you would put like 4 of them and then lift it, and there would be a tray of 4 more.
Okay.
And like I would keep all the Dick Tracy toys in this Dick Tracy like. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, why was I so into Dick Tracy?
Right.
Like Warren Beatty's,
right?
Like Dick Tracy, where Madonna is the blank.
Great character, great movie.
Yeah, I
very
thought
colorful.
it was. Yeah,
very colorful.
But I was like, sometimes we just like get fixated with kids are weird. Like, like what was I? I was like 7, and I'm like Warren Beatty and Madonna's Dick Tracy. I want all the toys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Teen
and that era, you had the Shadow come out.
Yeah,
right?
I loved the
with
Shadow.
Alec Baldwin, and then they had a toy line for that.
The Phantom.
I don't know if the Phantom had a toy line.
I had a Phantom toy.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't very good, but neither was the movie. So
I love it. No,
yeah,
the movie's awesome. That's on my top 5
okay.
superhero movies.
The
Phantom is in my top 5.
Well,
I love that movie.
I did love it as a kid.
Yeah,
like
I love it as an adult.
Yeah, well. Yeah,
Billy Zane Phantom is awesome.
It's time I think to go back and watch those movies. I haven't seen those movies maybe in decades.
The Shadow's great. I want to see Dick Tracy. I watched the Phantom at least once a year with the boys.
Yeah,
it is just so wholesome and everything that a classic tale like that should be. But I don't remember a toy line for the Phantom. You said there was one.
Yeah, I think there was just the Phantom.
Actually, you mentioned it. He came with a horse and the dog.
I just had the Phantom.
Oh, okay.
So maybe they sold the horse sold separately. I was thinking of some other niche.
Mighty Max was awesome.
I loved
you would buy like a base, right? It would come like a clamshell, and then it would open up, and then you would have like the little Mighty Max and the little bad guy and the little whatever, and you would, do whatever you wanted inside that.
You might have seen the giant Doom Castle. It was a red castle.
Yeah,
like a miniature. Gabe, I had this. Maybe is not ringing a bell?
He's looking it up right now.
What Mighty Max is. No,
the cartoon was fantastic.
What?
I loved Mighty Max.
You never got to see this? Yeah, I loved the Mighty Max cartoon, but what I loved about Mighty Max is that my sister was into Polly Pocket.
Okay.
And I was like,
this one?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one, Doom Castle.
No, I remember. That's the thing. I probably just thought about as like an extension of the Fisher Price toys.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you also had castles for those.
Yeah, no.
So I do remember this.
Yeah, that Doom Castle. So Mighty Max. So my landscapes for Mighty Max and my sister's Polly Pockets,
because they would open up.
They would open up like clamshells, right? So I could coexist and make like a whole like town. So I have people to save and stuff like that.
Yeah, you remember like having like I probably stole a lot of because I didn't have any siblings, but I probably stole a lot of your sister's toys.
Yeah,
to have somebody to save, to have like a love interest in the story.
Well, I remember I used to have me and my cousin. I have a girl cousin, and she had the Barbie line, and she had the Barbie dollhouse. And I always like the dollhouses are epic. They're huge. and I had the big rubber, like the what are they called? LJF, rubber WWF figures. Actually, it's the one that this show's logo is like based off. Right?
Okay.
LJN, right? So I got those rubber toys, and we would like marry them.
What?
Yeah, like so, like my wrestlers were married to her Barbies, and we'd be like, all right, we're gonna go to the show now, brother. Love you, yeah, love you, babe. No, and we did the thing because the thing was that Macho Man was married to Barbie, and we ran like a soap opera story where like Hogan
came in,
yeah,
and fought
Hogan
him.
came in, and like Randy Savage got jealous, and I think there was like a little bit of like a domestic struggle there in the house. It was like there was some pretty mature themes going on.
What was that? What was her name? What was the actual girl's name?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Yeah,
Miss Elizabeth.
Queen. Yeah, Miss Elizabeth is right.
I just did that in 2K.
Yeah,
I went through that whole journey. I had to fight Randy Savage.
that was trauma. That was like I was like a 7-year-old kid for figuring out what infidelity was. And
No, it's great.
Yeah,
to have
wrestling teaches you a lot.
but what is Macho Man
WWF
saying about
there
lust?
to teach you about
Yeah.
all these
Grown up.
moral quagmires?
Yeah,
Oh man, especially the Macho Man. Great role model for anyone.
yeah. You know, he was a complex character.
Sure.
You know, yeah.
Too macho.
Yeah, too macho. Man, there was a series of toys that really. Oh, you mentioned G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe.
Yeah, I wasn't really big on G.I. Joe. Like I had Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow.
I had like a couple years where I was.
Those are the coolest ones.
So
Yeah.
you know,
Cobra
you're a
Commander.
kid and your attention span is so much, right? And you're getting fed all of this
Yeah.
stuff by the mass media.
Yeah.
Hey, these are the toys you want this Christmas. Hey, these are the toys you want this Christmas. And they're always trying to upsell you.
There's a lot of commercialism involved in it.
100%.
Oh, because we talk. Okay, so we talk about like Superman and Batman as like toys of shows, but these shows were made to sell toys.
Right. So G.I. Joe
He-Man.
specifically to sell action
Transformers,
figures and
He-Man.
vehicles and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Mhm.
They'd even like update the rosters per year to then
Yeah.
market more figures, market more vehicles. And so I had a couple years where, I love G.I. Joes. And then you move over to Ninja Turtles and you do that thing for a couple years. Then you move over to X-Men, etc.
Whatever they're pushing.
Exactly.
In
Whatever
the
they're
Big
pushing.
Toys R Us book.
And then whatever catches your eye too, because
Yeah.
you know there was still Ninja Turtles on the shelves when I was into X-Men, and there was still things like I guess like Masters of the Universe
Mhm.
kind of died out, and then they tried to redo it in the 90s.
Yeah.
They kind of revamped He-Man and all of his characters, and I don't think it took.
No, I don't
to be
think it
honest
did
with you.
either, yeah.
I remember the figure and being like, oh wow, that's pretty cool, but then it fizzled, right?
Yeah.
And it's so weird to be a fan of something. They're like, oh, this is so cool, but it doesn't really catch on. So then it fizzles out, and you're like, oh man, I super loved that.
Yeah.
That show or that whatever it was.
Well, a lot of the ones that you're saying, like the Biker
Biker Mice from
Biker
Mars.
Mice from
Yeah,
Mars,
Street
or-
Sharks.
Yeah, Mighty
Street
Man.
Sharks. Street Sharks is awesome, man. Those things would like go into the asphalt.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking this, like I work now in a part of the energy sector that has to deal with, asphalt restoration for some of our projects and whatnot. I can just imagine the city having such a problem with mutant sharks tearing up their street. Like these guys just get around by tearing up asphalt.
Well-
Like, it would just be murder for any type of DOT project.
Yeah.
Oh, we have to re-asphalt this freaking block because the street sharks were fighting whatever.
Yeah, because for the record, in case you're not aware of this game, these sharks would just dive into the street and they would just surf like
their
through,
fins would
their
be
fins
cutting the
would be
asphalt.
just
Just menaces.
yeah.
Yeah.
So hey, I know you haven't lived in South Florida for a really long time, but these roads are always under construction. It feels like they're never getting done. You think
Maybe
that
that's why.
You think we're being terrorized by street sharks?
Yeah, right.
The government's keeping it from us.
Tell us that. They got alligators in sewers in New York. We got street sharks in the asphalt. Oh man, get off our asphalt, street sharks. G.I. Joe, there was a line of Street Fighter figures for the Street Fighter movie
Right.
that were made by who is it that makes the G.I. Joes? That's
Hasbro.
Hasbro.
That's Hasbro, right?
Hasbro.
So Hasbro made the Street Fighters using G.I. Joe models.
Yep.
So I remember I had like Ryu, Sagat, and all of them as G.I. Joes. And then there was this thing about the G.I. Joes, at least the ones in the 90s, where they were held together by a rubber band.
Yeah.
Because you could like twist their torso.
Yeah.
I snapped so many.
So many.
Yeah.
Yeah, the elastic kind of wears out and then eventually become brittle and it's gone.
Yeah.
Not a very long lasting part of the action figure. But they have reuse is a big thing nowadays. So like my son collecting the Marvel Legends, you'll see the same like body type multiple times in the different waves. They're trying to maximize their profits or cut costs, whatever it is, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But even back then, that's probably why we got so many Batmans, so many Spider-Mans.
Yeah.
You know, it was just this Spider-Man mold repainted to have some sort of water motif or whatever it is, and this Batman repainted yellow, repainted green, repainted
And I'd buy
purple.
every single one.
Well, I remember when the magic was like lost for me, like when my eyes were open, was I had this Hydro Man. And I love that figure. He had big giant fists, right? A big puffy chest.
My son Jason has it.
Right, okay. But then I believe it was in that same 6-pack, the Clone Saga.
Sandman
they have
was in it.
Sandman.
Repainted
And
Sandman.
I was like, yo, that's the
Yeah,
same figure.
It is.
And I was
totally-
like, but how? Why would they do this? Why didn't they make a new Sandman figure? That's the same toy I have. Now I have two. It was amazing when you had one guy with giant fists and a big puffy chest.
Yeah.
But now I got two dudes that look exactly the same
Yeah.
in different colors.
Just
Brothers.
different colors.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
toys are a lie.
So like the Jean Grey got repainted into Psylocke, repainted into Elektra, repainted into, you know, Storm or whatever. I mean, it's just constant stuff.
Wow.
Reusing all these parts. Again, these are business decisions made by corporations, and their market is little kids, and they're like, these kids aren't gonna notice.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I think that's one important thing. And I think that's kind of where I am actually in this era of my life, trying to balance like my passion for these things and also understanding that I'm just a target, you know? And I try to teach that, like, you know, to my kids at school and like the younger members of my family. It's like you're being targeted. Like these things are being marketed to you. So it's important to be able to discern like what is it that you're really connecting with and what is it that you're kind of being manipulated to connect with. You mentioned like the algorithm, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it used to be different because we'd be marketed through magazines and TV and media, which it's still very much in the same vein. But now it's like instant and
Yeah.
constant.
But it was like also like general marketing, right?
Yeah.
Like they would have like a demographic and like a, you know, you're kind of like doing like a shotgun type of thing where you're like just sending it out there and trying to hit something. Nowadays, that computer knows what you're typing into the search engine.
Oh no, what
you've
you're
seen
saying, what you're
last year,
speaking
what
into,
you're
like
seeing, all of that.
we've been talking about this. You're gonna get ads for
It's
action
scary.
figures
Yeah.
as soon as we're out of here.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's literally what's gonna happen.
Buy another Sentinel.
Like I go onto Google
Leave that
Chrome.
Sentinel Prime.
I go into Google Chrome, and it's like even sometimes Google, like I'll search something up on the Wikipedia, like the Wikipedia app,
Yeah.
and then I'll go to Google Chrome to Google something else, and then it finishes my thought basically for me. Like if like it pretty much knows what I'm gonna Google, and I'm like, that's crazy.
Nope. Goodbye.
So that being said, I like the part of the hobby that is physical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, off the computer in antique stores or secondhand
Well,
shops.
I admire that, to be honest with you, because I mean, it's really easy from my perspective to be like, that's a thing of the past, and to know that that's still going on, and that you
Still
can,
going on.
you're still bringing up another generation.
My
to,
sons
like,
do it, and it is
Nah,
fantastic.
see that's the thing. Like I think if I ever get to that point and it's time for me like buy action figures for my kids, I don't think I'll do it online unless it's like something specific that I need to get and I can't find anywhere
Yeah.
else. Because there's something
there's
about
Quaking commercial, you know,
Th-
that it's
there's-
everywhere.
yeah,
like-
but there's something about like going into the actual physical store, seeing it,
yeah.
having the packaging, making sure it's not dented or it's not cut or someone hasn't opened it already, and just going through it and like paying for it and heading back, and like that drive home, that excitement, he's like, I like that drive home where you're like, I have a new toy. It's
Tell
like
you a
I
funny story.
have something else to add into
Tell you a
that,
funny
you know?
story. We were camping in a place called Crossville, a couple hours from Chattanooga and whatnot, and we went to the local Walmart just to buy a couple supplies that we had left that we had forgot to pack. And you had mentioned it before, like going into Kmart, the first place you're going to is the toy aisle.
Mhm.
My boys are the same. So we're going to the toy aisle, and Hector sees a Scarlet Spider that he likes that design, right? The jacket and the red and stuff like that. And I see it too. And we both reach for it at the very same time, but he is faster than me. He grabs it off the peg, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, little sucker. And he knows I beat my dad
Yeah.
to this action figure and whatnot. And that you get going to the store.
Right.
You also get it going to the secondhand store and digging through whatever bins they have. And you don't know what you're going to get when you get there. And then also going to like conventions like we're going to go to next March in Ohio. You know, I have no idea what's at this place other than a bunch of dealers dealing with vintage action figures and other specialty items.
Is this the first time that you go to a convention this big?
This big? Yes, definitely. You know, and the draw is just, you know, hey, let's save our money. And that way you're teaching the kids how to save, how to plan for an event. And then also when you're there, the wheeling and dealing. You know, you're not going to try and spend all your money on the first table. You're going to go to different places and you're going to kind of come back. You might lose some, you might win some, whatever, but it's just the experience.
Combating that FOMO too. Like, because sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to get it now. Someone else is going to get it. No, let's go. Let's look around. Let's go
how many times has that happened to you, right? It happened to me, right? Where I'm like, I'm going to buy something for $10.
Yeah.
Because I've wanted it. But then, you know, I'll go find it for $5 somewhere else and be like, oh, I shouldn't have bought it for 10.
Right.
That's like con knowledge. Like that's what I learned. That's what I learned early on going with you guys to conventions. I remember there was one we went to, I think it was a MegaCon or SuperCon or something like that. And I bought like these like 3 plastic kunai, like the knives, like the ninja knives, for $15. And I remember I got in the car and everyone's like talking about what they got. And it's like, oh, I got these comics. Oh, I got this model, this whatever. I'm like, oh, I got these knives. And everyone just looked at me and like, you bought that for $15? And they just started laughing at me. And I'm like, after that, I realized I was just like, I'm going to go. And it's like, I don't need this right now. Yeah. And I learned that even like growing up, going to the mall, going like shopping for anything. Yeah. I was just like, I don't have to get this right now. Yeah. I'll go around. If I really want it, if it's something that's really pressing on me and I need it, I'm going to go back for it. Mm-hmm. If it's not, then it's like, all right, I don't really care for it. And I left. I'm gone. Yeah. Or next, that's the thing. You find something better. You find the same thing for cheaper.
Yeah. I do that shopping online. Like my wife goes through this because, you know, she'll be on her feet and there's like, this will solve all your problems and this solution. And I'm like, you don't really need that. We don't really need that. And I fall into it too. And I'm like, oh, that would be great. But I'm like, I'm not even going to put it in my cart. I'm not even going to look at it. Like, I'm going to wait. And in like 5-7 days, I don't even care about that thing anymore. And I think that's a good lesson to learn. And I think you learn to delay gratification when you learn those lessons of like, oh, I did it and it wasn't worth it. Yeah. Like I could have done better, or
having your entire family make fun of you and laugh at you,
or shame, and guilt, and everything. You mentioned real quick before we wrap, the iPad generation, and I think that Gabe did when we were talking before. I think you're a little closer. I know you're not in the iPad generation.
I am not in the iPad generation for sure.
But what do you think has been lost from your perspective, from a younger perspective? Obviously, we're in our 40s. You're a little younger than that. What do you think has been lost, that switch from physical to digital?
I think it's time, because I think when you guys were growing up, you had your toys and then you had your video games. And I think for me, I'm young enough to be like, I'm young enough to be like, okay, I know necessarily what the appeal is, what the draw is, but I'm not necessarily that young where it's like it's going to take up all of my time, or like that's going to be the thing that I spend all my time is. I know that there's a lot of parents that, you know, allow their children to just get on the iPad and play their games, or watch their videos and stuff like that. And every situation is different, but I think it's time. And I think it's one of those things where it's like how you were talking about these stories, you're spectating, you're having all that stuff, like, you know, shown to you, delivered to you, instead of having the opportunity to create and build and, you know, make your own world. It's like all you're doing is just like next YouTube video, next episode. Which is, I mean, even as an adult, I find that, like, you know, in my own life, necessarily like with toys, but, you know, watching all this, like consuming all this media, these movies, these TV shows, with like the plethora of streaming services and, you know, content that we have now with social media as well. When it's like, when's the last time like I sat down, because I used to, like, you know, I used to create stories when I was a kid. I used to, toys that I didn't, and I was like, there was a point where like it made me want to start like writing my own stories, you know, creating and putting things out. And luckily we have a platform that we're able to do stuff like this, have these conversations and put things out there. I think, the more technology progresses, everything's gonna get, it's touted as being easier and easier and easier, and you put these devices, these powerful devices, in the hands of children, and some of them are able to do incredible things. Don't get me wrong, like there are some things that's like these kids are smart, but sometimes it takes away from that creativity that we had as children, that creating our own multiverse. Instead, I'm just gonna watch an episode of TV about it, or a YouTube video.
And I think also tactile kinesthetic development, like having these figures and using them, moving them around. Even writing down. Like I became an old digital writer, and everything would be either on my phone or on my computer. And now I've come back to like, let me get a physical book and read it. Just the flipping of the pages, the jotting down notes, like carrying a notepad. I have a notepad with me, right, every moment, but like, there's something about the way that you internalize what you're writing down when you're actually physically writing it down. And these are skill sets that they get lost as we kind of move away from them in education. Like in schools, they're taught less and less. And in the homes, they're taught less and less because you're jumping to in-app purchases and digital downloads instead of these physical things. And I think that it's easy as an adult to see myself losing that touch because I had a foundation where I used to use my hands, and I'd be like, I'm losing part of myself. Let me kind of realign. That's very challenging for someone who is born and raised and like never experiences like using their creativity output in that way.
No, yeah, and it's like you never see a kid move faster, like when you were talking about with your son, and you just grab that thing so quick. It's like you're never gonna move fast. You're never gonna have those reflexes as like when a prized toy is falling from a certain height that you put them up. I used to have like a bunk bed situation where I had a desk, and then I had my bed, but it would be a setting where it's like it's off of a cliff or something like that, and I'd place my toy on there, and sometimes like he would fall, and I'd have to grab it, I have to catch it. You put these things that, like, and that's the thing. The physical aspect, the kinetic touch that you have, the connection that you have, like creating these stories, and you're literally bringing them to life. It's different from getting those things on the screen.
Yeah.
And I think, like you were saying, it's an interesting point where it's like when you're growing up, like the kids nowadays, like that's all they know. That's all they're growing up. Like the other day I went to go watch a movie that came out 10 years ago. And to me, it's like, I'm young, like, yeah. But there's people that had never seen that movie, like, in their life. Like, in their life or in the theaters. And the experience, and I see people, like, bawling their eyes, and I'm like, oh, crap. There are people like, because I have this mentality where, like, I've always been the young one,
Yeah.
I've always been the younger one, and it's like, to have these experiences and to see people younger than me have these experiences too, it's just like, oh wow, I'm moving on, like I'm progressing, further along in life. I'm getting older, and I'm seeing things from a different light, a different perspective, and I think that's interesting. But I don't know why, like as soon as you said like, shopping for toys online or Amazon, like that notion just like disgusted me a bit. Where I'm like, I'm gonna buy an action figure on like, I don't know, like, because it's like obviously like it's the internet's made it more accessible for that to happen.
Yeah.
But there's something about just going into the store and getting like the memories that I have. I feel like that's a piece that I just want to keep with me. Something that I take from my childhood and want to pass it on to the next generation, whatever that is. Like that's just something I grew up doing, and that's something that I want to keep, like, continue to keep that tradition, I guess.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we go, Sock?
Enjoy any hobby responsibly. Don't get crazy with the expenses and stuff like that. Don't let it take away time from what really matters, which is spending time with family and friends. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
having
for being
me.
here.
Link.
Love you, Link.
Buddy, we still miss you. But I had a blast talking about action
Appreciate
figures with my buddy George.
We loved having you here.
Yeah.
Once again, whenever you're listening to this in the new year, the holiday season just passed. Maybe you got some new gifts, digital or physical. But whatever you do, take some time. Play with something.
Toys, action figures.
I did it again.
How was it? What was it? How do you play with the action figures?
No. Just have a great week, everyone.
Oh, Miguel.
What's up? Cut. Just cut.